We now have with us the 9th generation in the Galaxy S lineup of devices. There have been several ups and downs, and some have been very successful, while others haven't quite. However, the S9 Duo is probably two of the most complete smartphones available on the market now, but that's not to say that they don't have issues. While we are still compiling our detailed review and other videos, here are some of the stuff that I found unacceptable for a flagship phone. This is Sandeep from Revettless. Let's examine what they are. The Galaxy S8 Duo had a rear-mounted fingerprint scanner, which isn't out of the ordinary. However, what was annoying is the fact that Samsung managed to place it in an awkward position. Instead of putting it centrally below the camera, they placed it to a side of the camera module, which made it difficult to access, especially on the larger screened S8 Plus, which had a large footprint despite the small bezels. They only made matters worse with the Note 8, where they added a secondary lens but still kept it on the side. Since the phone was bigger and the sensor was pushed further to a side, it even made it more difficult to access. People like me with larger hands didn't have much of an issue, but it still was inconvenient. Now with the S9 and S9 Plus, on paper at least, the fingerprint scanner seems to be positioned better and easier to reach. While it is indeed easier to reach because it's right in the middle of both the phones, what's not good is the fact that it's on the same island as the camera unit, and there also seems to be no real texture or recession to a scanner to help you identify whether you're touching the camera unit or the sensor. You do get used to it pretty fast, but even after a few days, I still find myself touching the camera sensor at times. While we're talking about the rear and portion surrounding the camera unit, it's probably best to bring up the second issue I found: the heart rate sensor and single LED flash. Samsung introduced a single LED flash with the Galaxy S2, and since then they haven't changed it much. Sure, the brightness and LED color may have become refined over time, but it's still way too old school in terms of technology compared to dual LED, dual tone LED, quad LED, and xenon setups found on other smartphones. While the flash on smartphones don't really get used all that often, and even when used, the images produced are arguably bad looking, it still would be good to see some advancement in this category from an industry leader like Samsung. Now about the heart rate sensor. Samsung really pushed this feature on the S5, and as reviewers even did try it out in detail on phones such as the S6 series. But since then I get the feeling, like myself, hardly anyone else has even really used it apart from maybe testing it to see if it works or for review purposes. It seems like Samsung bought a shitload of sensors and didn't want to waste them, so they keep bundling them on phones. I personally would rather not have this and wish Samsung allocated that space for something else better like a flash, or even just leave it without adding anything. The Galaxy S9 Plus, like the Note 8 before it and the high-end S8 Plus, has 6 gigs of RAM. However, it really hasn't improved much in terms of performance even with the newer chipset. You still encounter lag on the phone when you use it regularly on a day-to-day basis, and that's even without launching intensive games or apps. It seems like Samsung had this issue a long time back, and instead of fixing this root cause from scratch, they just try to overcome it with optimizations, and despite the powerful hardware, it never seems to go away. It's not too noticeable to regular users, but if you're a power user or one who knows his or her hardware, you may find this annoying, especially if you come from a device such as the Google Pixel. I'm not sure if they'll fix it ever, but it's certainly high time that they do so. I've seen many people on the web praising the new and intuitive camera UI, except that I don't find it intuitive or useful. I find it more cumbersome and slow to swipe through different modes than to hit a button and directly select the one I want. It's probably more iPhone-like, but that doesn't mean it's good. I'll also say that I don't like the iPhone camera UI. Despite being major UI and design freaks themselves, it seems like they made a big mess out of the camera UI, and it's sad to see Samsung follow their footsteps. Samsung introduced their adaptive fast charging a few years ago, which is basically a rebranded version of Qualcomm's Quick Charge 2.0. It was pretty good at the time and was acceptable until a few years back. However, since then it's been several years and Samsung hasn't really even bothered to switch to QC 3.0 or something that's as fast. Other makers have blazing fast charging speeds such as OnePlus with dash charge, Pixel and other devices with power delivery, Moto with turbocharging, and Razer phone with something like the QC 4.0 Plus. Some aren't even half the cost of the S9 Plus, and yet they stick to a charging speed that's faster. If the S9 and S9 Plus had great battery life, it wouldn't have been that much of an issue, but that's not the case. And Samsung really needs to get on board a faster charging standard. I don't want you guys to think of this as a hate video to Samsung. It's in fact supposed to do just the opposite. I've owned every single Galaxy device since the S2 and every Note device since the Note 2, and I would love it if they ironed out these issues. It's more of a message to Samsung to kind of bring to their notice minor things that really need their attention, because these minor things could cause a big improvement in their user experience. It's not even that difficult for them to fix. Thanks again for watching. See you again in the next one.